Welcome back to Smart Life with Dr. Gina. My next guest is somebody who has experienced corruption firsthand, and that is in the political realm, but has to do with the pharmaceutical industry. He's also here to break down the pot or not to pot question. Welcome to Smart Life, former senator from Missouri, John Loudon, and of course, my husband for all disclaimer purposes. Welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be with you. How exciting.
Great to have you. And I wanted to talk to you about this because you really understand a couple of these issues, John, unlike most people that I know. And I want to talk first about the corruption between and the collusion really between the AMA and Big Pharma. But I want to preface that with this. I don't think that every single nutritional substance out there, and I know you don't either. We're not even big into the whole supplement thing. That's not really our gig. And I said to you this morning as we were discussing this, I said, I can tell when I take a Tylenol, headache goes away. I've taken a lot of supplements for a lot of things, and I often wonder if they're really doing anything at all, and I can't take one and feel better. Is that part of what is working against these supplements and this vitamin industry, or is this really all just about the corruption?
Well, I think it's a mix of both. I think part of it is you don't have an instantaneous, awesome, immediate health effect from most nutritional supplements, at least that I've ever experienced. And as you say, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of them per se. But one of the things but I think that what most interests me in the latest studies that are coming out that are kind of bashing the nutritional supplements, I always look at studies like that and I say, okay, who funded them?
Yeah.
What's really behind it? And like the one doctor quoted in the Wall Street Journal today, he says right in the article, for decades I've told people not to take nutritional supplements. I mean, so here's the guy leading the study saying you shouldn't use them, and it's just he's concluded what's always been his bias.
Yeah, and I think, too, I look back at my experience alongside you as your wife when you were in the Missouri Senate and the whole thing about how traditionally medically modeled I was. And not that there's necessarily anything corrupt in just, certainly we have a lot of friends that are doctors, physicians, and so that goes without saying. But people do have to be very careful because I remember when you were debating on the Senate floor the issue of midwifery, and I remember that one of the biggest arguments against it was, oh, babies are going to die. But they would say, they would cite these far out examples of these horrible things happening when babies were born at home, and these were more than likely somewhere in some rural part of some other state that where they didn't have access to any kind of intelligence on how to deliver a baby, much more so than they were examples of well-educated, licensed midwife. But in particular, I felt a real hostility from the American Medical Association in any sort of natural medicine because, frankly, it hit them in the wallet. They didn't want to talk about things like their infection rates in hospital and the medical mishaps that kill people every day and that, in fact, killed my own grandmother. She was prescribed too large a dose of drug, and it killed her. These things happen all the time, and yet they don't want to mention that. They want to mention, well, if you take this supplement, you could die, when in fact they were giving, I think, the rats in the study way beyond what the recommended dosage was. So what's the answer, John, for just real people at home trying to sort out this data and the money trail and all the corruption?
Well, first of all, it's always it's just like the whole point of your show, be smart, be skeptical. Get a second opinion, a third opinion. When all the doctors, and I couldn't believe longtime friends would, come and say, oh, midwifery is dangerous. And you're like, they're like every baby in every other country in the world is born with a midwife, including all over Europe. Oh, gee, really? Yeah. I mean, why do we have to have babies delivered in a trauma room, in a surgical room?
Mm-hmm.
That's just not necessary.
And you and I were some of those early subscribers to that theory that, oh, babies must be born in a hospital. And we did choose to have our babies born in a hospital, but we realized as we were educated more that some of the stuff we were believing was almost a fable.
That's right. And that's because, and the other hat that I wore while I was holding office, is we ran a public relations firm together. We've studied marketing and the tactics of marketing. And people are deluged with marketing, and you have to be savvy and know. And I always look at, there's always some truth to any kind of a spoof or sarcasm or ironic statement. One of my favorite examples that sums up this point about the corruption in the American Medical Association model is the, we've all heard this statement, take two pills and call me in the morning.
Right.
And that's been around almost 100 years. That's the joke. You go to the doctor, they prescribe two pills and say, call me in the morning.
Right.
That's because the medical schools in the United States are the biggest funders, the biggest granting organizations. The research studies, the research at these medical institutions is from Big Pharma.
Right.
So the same doctor who's saying, I've never believed in nutritional supplements, goes on to say you should eat healthy, watch your diet, exercise, don't smoke, and take pharmaceuticals.
And oh, by the way, take pharmaceuticals, right. And we know that there is kickback there. And so I guess that's just a thing for people to be aware of. It's never that you shouldn't take your medicine. And certainly heart patients should take their medicine. Cancer patients should take their medicine. Certainly mental health patients should take their medicine. But you do have to look at those connections. And we'll continue to point to some of those. I want to shift gears with you for just a moment before we run out of time and talk to you, because one other argument I hear a lot on this to pot or not to pot question that has become so pervasive in our culture today is that if we took away the black market for marijuana, we'd do so much for our economy, for crime, so on and so forth. Talk to us about that from a legislative perspective.
Well, that is when you talk about the legalization of pot, and this could be an hour-long show very easily on this topic. But to go right to the financial question, when I did a thorough research on the legalization of pot, every single political science student in the class except one studying the topic came back and said you cannot legalize pot. And the main reason is that every purported gain, like there will be no black market, so the drug crimes will just go away. You'll take the money that you spend on enforcement of pot laws and enforce other laws. Those statements are all bought and paid for by legal advocates who've been on a concerted effort. Normal is the group, and they're funded by George Soros, and then none of them are true. Mexican crime gangs went through the roof when California legalized pot because they go to the legal growers and they extort them. You buy your pot, you're a legal grower, you got a license in California. Buy your pot from us and it will go well for you. Don't buy from the Mexican drug gangs and you'll be in trouble. And so the Mexican drug gangs are selling more pot, making more money, are more powerful than ever before. So legalization does not equate to lower enforcement costs or new revenues for the government.
And yet that's something that we continue to hear. I think all you have to kind of do is look at the culture in California, where we have a Kush doctor on every corner, and decide if this is the culture you want for your children. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. It produces a completely different culture, doesn't it?
Hey, they're smoking so much dope they reelected Jerry Brown and Barack Obama.
There you have it. What other wisdom on these two topics have we not talked on? Because I know you know so much about both, and I want to make sure I covered everything.
On which specifically?
Well, on the big pharma question with this drug study, and also on the pot issue.
Well, one of my favorites, I've always told people, and I had great benefits growing up, and one of them is I had a close friend from Germany, and I would always compare notes with how they did, starting when we were 7th grade, and how most Europeans default to nutrition and healthy lifestyle before pharmaceuticals. And when they and the doctors trained in Europe and in the Caribbean and South America are less corrupted by the big pharma medical model that we are. So they default to holistic, natural. So yeah, they will do more blood tests and check for deficiencies before they just order a new drug. So I tell people, look, if you're really looking for a general practitioner, find somebody who went to medical school in another country, and that's a good place to start.
That's interesting because we hear so often that it's dangerous to go to Mexico, and maybe that's for other reasons of just crime and things like that. But it makes you wonder if those doctors are not running a test just because they're going to get paid more for that test. I remember one story I looked at where the discrepancies just for at a hospital versus a clinic right down the street, a blood test, the cost difference was thousands of dollars. So we do have
Hmm.
to be very careful. John, I appreciate you being on with us today on Smart Life. You do bring a lot of wisdom in that experience of being a legislator, and it
Well, I
certainly
appreciate that. If I could punctuate one final short point,
quickly.
everybody, please understand, big pharma is not evil. Doctors aren't evil.
Right.
The AMA isn't necessarily inherently evil. They all have motivations that may not necessarily be the public's interest first.
That's right. So
So
people
you
just
have to examine to be skeptical.
need to be wise. Yes. Thank you so much.